House Judiciary Chairman with us now. Sir, good morning to you.
Morning.
Leslie Wolf. All right, on screen, guys. Call for number one. Assistant U.S. Attorney for the DOJ out of Wilmington, Delaware, part of the five-year investigation into Hunter Biden. Served with David Weiss, allegedly deviated from protocol for preferential treatment. That's the allegation, and is known to be a Democratic campaign donor. Leslie Wolf. How could one person hold all of this up? Is it that simple?
Well, I think it was the whole investigation, as you pointed out, Bill. It took him 5 years. It's still ongoing now. It's now a special counsel. David Weiss been named special counsel. But Leslie Wolf, according to Mr. Shapley, Mr. Ziegler, is the lady who said we're not going to look into campaign finance concerns that Mr. Shapley, Mr. Ziegler, and others of the investigative team thought should be examined. She's the one who said you can't use the term big guy when you do any interviews. You can't talk about political figure number one, who we all know was Joe Biden. So we want to ask her questions about all that. And maybe most importantly, why the investigation decided to let the tax years 2014-2015, when the bulk of the Burisma income was coming into Hunter Biden, why they let the statute of limitations lapse for those years. My theory is when you get into Burisma, you get to the White House. I mean, it's one thing to charge Hunter Biden on a gun charge in Delaware. That doesn't involve Joe Biden. But you get into Burisma, it does, because this is a Ukrainian energy company that paid Hunter Biden so much money. So we want to ask her some questions about that as well.
And then what will happen to that testimony? I think there was a little bit of confusion yesterday about what Hunter Biden said he was coming to do or not. So this is a closed-door deposition, but will you be able to release a transcript of that, or do you hold that?
You hold those transcripts. We will release them at some point, but you don't want to release it until you've interviewed everyone else, because you release it, there's sort of a template that the next witness who you want to bring in has for what questions are coming. So typical investigations, you do these depositions behind closed doors. There's a transcript obviously developed, and then at some point you release the transcript, you do a report. But in an impeachment inquiry, there will be some kind of report obviously at some point if we decide to move to articles of impeachment.
You mentioned these years, 2014 and 2015. Do you consider those to be the most serious charges?
Yeah, because I think the theory of this case is, I think it's an old story. You got a politician who does certain things, those actions benefit his family financially, and then there's an effort to conceal it. Yeah, I think the effort to cover it up and conceal it was, the way David Weiss and Leslie Wolf handled this investigation. But if you really go back to the start, it's Hunter Biden's involvement with Burisma. I say this all the time. There are four fundamental facts here. Fact number one, Hunter Biden gets put on the board. Fact number two, he's not qualified to be on the board of Burisma, this Ukrainian energy company. He said so himself. Fact number three, the executives at Burisma asked Hunter Biden, weigh in with your father, help us with the pressure we are under from the prosecutor. Key fact number four is Joe Biden goes to Ukraine just 3 days after he gets that request and conditions the funding of Ukraine that's already been approved on the firing of that very prosecutor who's applying the pressure to the company that Hunter Biden sits on the board of. Those facts are, I think, clear as could be, and that is sort of the pattern. This is when it's all started. And then you have the actions, of course, with David Weiss and the Justice Department and how they left those key tax years out of any charging, even though Mr. Ziegler, Mr. Shapley, and the rest of the investigative team thought they should have been charged.
Yesterday, when Hunter Biden went on to Capitol Hill and gave that statement, he used a very specific word. Listen here.
Let me state as clearly as I can. My father was not financially involved in my business, not as a practicing lawyer, not as a board member of Burisma, not in my partnership with a Chinese private businessman, not in my investments at home nor abroad, and certainly not as an artist.
Your reaction to that particular word, financially?
No. Yeah, I think, Dana, you've hit on the key word. This is what we saw yesterday right away as well, because that qualifier, I think, is important. Because, again, remember the pattern. Initially, Joe Biden said, I had no involvement whatsoever, none at all, with my son's business. This summer, when we deposed Devin Archer, one of Hunter Biden's business partners, the story changed. Well, there were dinners, there were meetings, there were phone calls, but we just talked about the weather. There was no business talk. Now it's he wasn't involved financially. So, again, I think that just raises the concerns we've had all along and shows that, because if you come back to the fundamental question, what were they providing? What was the service? What was the product? What were they offering? And it seems obvious to me, I think obvious to anyone with common sense, it was access to the brand that Devin Archer talked about in his deposition, and the brand was Joe Biden. Access to the guy who had influence. That was what they were offering.
Sir, thank you for your time. Feels like we're just at the beginning of this.
Thank you.
Again.